Yeah, they had all kinds of meetings.
Good morning. I want to call to order the meeting of the Public Employees Committee. Madam Clerk, would you take roll?
Alderman Rhodey.
Present?
Alderman Vollmer.
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairwoman Howard.
Present.
5 present, you have quorum.
This time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to my co-chair, Alderwoman Murphy, and I want to just deliver Board Bill 34 with an amendment. Committee members, you have before you Board Bill 34 that puts before the voters of the City of St. Louis an amendment to the charter of the city to allow for the hiring of people from outside the city limits and doesn't restrict those that work here to living in the city. I'd like to add to that an amendment that defines the date, which will be November. Okay, well, let's just start at the beginning. Yeah.
Third day of November.
Would be the third day of November, 2020. I'd like your kind consideration of that. Madam Chair.
Let's see, I guess we need to move to have the amendment before us, or hold it, let's see.
Can I do it? Mm-hmm. I move that we put Board Bill 34, or Amendment Number 1 to Board Bill 34 up for consideration.
Second? Second.
And we'll take attendance. Could you call the roll, please?
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Vollmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairwoman Howard.
Aye.
It's 5 aye votes.
Now I would like you to consider Board Bill 34 as amended.
Now I would like to put before us Board Bill 34 as amended. Please call the roll.
You need a
We're
motion.
making a motion
We're
to,
making a motion to put...
To pass that out now,
Pass
with
it
the, or to adopt the amendment?
I thought we just did. We just did that.
adopt the amendment, now she's looking to pass the board bill
Pass the
out.
board bill out. So that would be,
Board Bill 34 as amended, up for discussion.
we just, what is board bill, oh,
We just
board bill number 6
That's-
as amended floor substitute, is that from last?
No, that's later on. It's on the
Oh.
agenda later.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No discussion then. No further questions.
Does any committee member have any questions?
No questions at this time?
Okay, Alderwoman Hubbard?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the committee. I just wanted to do a brief recap. Now, I know the reason for us doing this, like, there were shortages as far as tree trimmers, and what
There's
other
shortages in
departments is-
almost all city departments of workers. Part of the reason of doing this is to allow us to broaden our net to hire people. There already is provisions on the books to give people that live in the city a consideration when
like
hiring.
a preference or something?
A preference, yes.
With hiring.
So that will remain, but we'll be able to hire people and interview people and take applications from people outside the city limits.
Okay, and currently with the police officers, if they work 7 years, then they can move out, or what's the...
I'm going to defer to Richard Frank on that, because I'm very, it depends on when they were hired, so I will defer to his expertise on that. Would you please?
Thank you, Alderman.
Okay.
Thank you, honorable members of the Public Employees Committee. Currently,
State your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Richard R. Frank, and I'm the Director of Personnel for the city. Currently, we have several different standards, which is very confusing for employees for residency. For police officers or any employee of the police division who is hired prior to 9/113, per state statute, they can move out of the city after 7 years of living in the city. The fire department is different. Per a Supreme Court decision, after they have worked in the fire department, after 7 years, they can move outside the city, provided, however, that the schools have been either provisionally accredited or unaccredited. But several years ago, the schools are now accredited. And so the time clock is ticking for the fire department people in order to kind of address some of our staffing shortages and to address having one standard of residency for all employees except people appointed by the mayor as a department director or agency. We strongly support, in the Department of Personnel, this board bill. We have seen that over the past several years, the actual number of people in the police division and in the fire department pretty stable in terms of how many people are living inside and outside. There was an initial exodus, but what we have seen is that we're getting fewer and fewer and fewer people applying for jobs. I currently have 130 job announcements out there, and we're just not getting the quality of candidates. Now what I'm seeing is I've got about 105 people over in the police department who are waiting screening, but so many of them are failing the background investigations, and the same people are being filtering through. So I'm seeing the same names. It's like we're fishing in the same pool, I think is how our chairman here before had said. So those are the different residency requirements, and that's why we ask for your consideration of this.
Okay. And so this will open it up citywide. It would take away that rule that you have to be a city resident to obtain employment with the city.
Yes, Alderwoman, it would. And this would put it on the ballot, and if it received a 60% vote of the people, then Article VIII, Section 2 of the charter would be changed, and the only people who would be required to live in the city would be the mayor's appointments.
Okay, and that would be 60% of the votes cast or registered voters?
60% of the votes cast.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No further questions.
Alderman Bosley? You have any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, sorry. And good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you also.
Good morning.
So there's a few perspectives that I have on the residency rule here. As we dwindle in population, the tax dollars that we receive from the individuals who live in the city, 9 times out of 10, if you live here, you're going to spend your paycheck here. Except for, spending it in places like Walmart, places where we really don't have, superstores where you have to kind of go outside of the city limits, but your gas, your groceries, where you spend your evenings, unless you are going, to Six Flags or places out, once again, like golfing, where we really don't have those type of amenities except for, places like Forest Park. My concern is that as time moves forward, if we don't get a hold of this population decline that we have, then we'll see a large reduction in tax revenue also. The city is one of the largest employers in the city. So, it first of all gives us, it gives the residents of the city an opportunity to work, for the city. Second of all, it keeps the tax revenue revolving within the city. And I can't say that unequivocally that every single person that works for the city spends their money within the city, but you'd fathom that,
Yeah, I do, Alderman.
So that's just one of the issues that I have with it. Another one is, when we talk about hiring, and this isn't necessarily about the bill, I think that the effort is most certainly what's needed for us to figure out how to fill up these jobs. But I myself have spent and sent several people for employment here in the city, and it takes a very, very long time for them just to even get a call back. I sent at least maybe 40 to 50 people to forestry for jobs to fill up those jobs before they ever even got to where we were stressed for them. We started sending people for jobs, I believe, in maybe February, something like that. Soon as I actually talked to the director, the mayor's office, and we spoke about how important it was for forestry to kind of be ahead of the wave because of how behind they were last year. I think that we only had 80 employees, and we should have had like 100 and it was like 170, something like that. I don't think that we have done enough, and this is just from my perspective, to really ensure that these jobs are not only posted, but these jobs are something that we are kind of throwing in front of the city residents regularly. You know, just posting them, just seeing that as the type of city we are, I think we have to do more in engaging with the general public to let them know that these jobs exist, what the qualifications are for them, and how long they should expect when applying for a job to get a call back. I understand that, you know, this definitely could be a daunting task dealing with all this paperwork, but, you know, as a question, what is the general timeline? And I know each job may be different, but just can you give me a general timeline on how long it would generally take if you were working at, so is your office completely filled?
My office, I have 2 vacancies right now, actually 3, and the human resource specialist 1, and I'd like to be able to address what your comments are, because I think maybe there's some misperceptions. First of all, in terms of recruitment efforts, we have now gone increasingly to social media. So we we post on monster.com, we have posted on government jobs, we go out to every single job fair that we can. 40% of the time when people say that they're not interested in working for the city, it's because of the residency requirement. We keep statistics on those. We try and hire people as quickly as possible if there's an existing need, for instance, for like tree trimmer or for people to cut grass, et cetera. What happens is that because those people are in the parks and working with juveniles, we need both county and city record checks, and that slows down the process. So we've been reaching out directly to the St. Louis County Police, working with our police department as well, so that we can get those people the record checks as quickly as possible. We've even reached out to Slate because it costs to get a record check, you know, and Slate has given us money to give to the actually directly to the applicants so that they can, you know, pay for that record check. We don't require people who are limited term or part-time to live in the city. So many of these people, you know, that we're talking about in terms of like forestry, et cetera, have already, you know, moved outside the city, have never lived in the city. We're reaching out to them already. But we do a lot of different types of recruitment for our police officers. We have 2 full-time police officers with a van with labels on the side that advertise for them. We have gotten banners for people in the refuse department to advertise, to drive with the trucks. We're paying our employees $500 each time they refer someone to the police academy, and they complete the police academy. You know, they're given that cash award. A lot of different kind of incentives, but the reality is that we, as I said, are just fishing from the same pool. A lot of the people that we interview have to be able to pass those criminal background checks. I've seen them both in forestry, in parks, recreation, where there's some things that we don't have a problem with. If you were caught stealing, et cetera, you know, and you've been clean for a few years, we certainly, you know, can hire you. But if we have people who've committed statutory rape or a molestation or serious drug charges, et cetera, we look at each of those things individually. But we do stay in close contact with those applicants, but we need that information. We're trying to streamline that process, and we've been working with the mayor's office to get those record checks back. In terms of people spending their money in the city, you know, I think that that's a valid concern. I think we still have a lot of attractions that are going to keep people in the city. As I said before, we have not seen a big exodus in the last 4 years. The number of people who are in the police department living outside the city and the fire department have stabilized. You know, we have not seen an increase. Actually, there was a small decrease in the number of police officers who are living outside of the city, and that will happen, you know, with the residency rule. But one of the things that Alderwoman Howard has mentioned, which I think is a really good suggestion, is we can encourage people positively through our negotiations with our 12 different unions. We can possibly do pay regulations and give someone an incentive on an annual basis for living in the city. We mentioned perhaps maybe $500, that you get for staying in the city. So we're trying to approach this a little bit more positively than just trying to be somebody's parent and saying, you've got to move in the city or be fired. And I've had to do that. I've had to, prove people being fired because, quite honestly, I had to do that in my own department this week because the person could no longer afford the house they had in the city. They had an opportunity to move to the county. I have to let them go. So I do think that we're doing everything we can. We're open to more suggestions. We work with the aldermen. We've done neighborhood types of outreach as well. I know that we've gone to job fairs in Alderwoman Howard's district. We've worked with aldermen throughout the city. We've worked with Representative Clay. We're trying our best to advertise, but the biggest single impediment is the residency. And the other thing that's a big impediment is our pay, because we have not given pay increases for years. 2004 to 2008, we got nothing. So what we have done is we get a minor pay increase, but we have addressed the lowest hanging fruit. We've given pay raises of anywhere from 10 to 26% to our tow truck operators, to our traffic people, to our water utility workers. All the laborers I elevated up to utility workers. Each of them got at least a 5% raise. And now we are executing a contract for a citywide compensation consultant to come in. And, the mayor and the Board of Aldermen will all be aware of the results. And as a city, we'll see if we can really put the money behind, our employees to make this a more attractive place to work.
Understood. So, and I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
So, once again, as far as, what would be a normal processing time frame if someone was to put in an application, once again, let's say for instance for a tree trimmer, and they have their city in the county and they turn that in the day that they turn in their application?
You know what I've done? I've granted what we call provisional appointments. And what that means is that if you get me that information, I granted, I think, 20 on one day, meaning those people can start the next day. And then we'll follow up with the formal testing and putting them on the list. So when we had this emergency situation with the cutting of grass, et cetera, I worked with the director of operations and with the parks director, and I just said, get them in here, get me the information, we'll put them to work the next day. And that's what happened. One of the other things, though, is, to be honest, is we've cut too deep. This city made the decision, not in personnel, to eliminate a number of refuse operators and a number of tree trimmers. Even the private industry cannot fill these positions. They're having to up their salaries to $15 an hour, $16 an hour. They just can't find those kind of people. We've lowered the minimum qualifications for some of the people to cut grass. We checked with the state law. We now have 16-year-olds, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Instead of being out in the streets in trouble, we're hiring 16, 17-year-olds for the parks, and we got some of them. I spoke yesterday with Todd Walterman. He's going to be approaching E&A about possibly adding 25 to 30 positions, taking career seasonal people. In the past, the city has worked these people during a long season of about 8 months, and then they lay them off. I don't think that breeds real loyalty. They might find a job somewhere else that is full-time. So they're accepting my strategy, which is to convert these positions into full-time. So these people have a full-time job with the city and won't be out looking for some other position.
Okay. So once again, just from my experience, I've sent people to apply for particular jobs, and they will have everything they need because I've sat there with them and ensured that they filled out the application fully correctly and provided whatever forms that were needed to have a complete application, like your city and county background check. And it has sometimes taken 60 days for us to get back to them.
Well, what can happen, Alderman, is that we can't fill the position until a requisition is sent in by the department. Yeah, the supervisor has to submit in this form saying, we want to fill this position. And as I said right now, when we talk about shortage of police, yeah, we do have a shortage of police, for instance, on the streets, 147. That 147 also, though, includes people who are on administrative suspension, who are on family medical leave, who are out for some other reason. We have 79 people in the police training academy, and I'm waiting to hear back for over 100 people we've referred. So I have to wait in personnel until I get that requisition in. So the quicker the departments get the requisition into me, the latest it takes is 2 days to fill that job. If it's a new title, it's different. Let's say we want a government services analyst. In that case, it takes about a month and a half because we have to post the position for 3 weeks under our rules, gather all the applicants, screen through them, et cetera.
So I just want to put this on record, so, if there needs to be reference at some point in time, we can do so. So I've talked to a few directors over departments, and they have said the exact opposite. And it's always in this city, we playing the blame game and pointing the finger, not to say you are, but in different departments, like one of the department heads that I spoke with said that they have sent names down and it still takes months for people to get back to them. And they have to go out and sometimes grab those employees on their own and fill the application, will vet them kind of on their own and not wait on personnel. And not to say, once again, that's on your end. I'm not sure whether communications may have been dropped, but listening to what you're saying the process would normally go like, and then hearing them say that the process isn't going that particular way, I think there's a breakdown in communication somewhere. I have yet to see a hiring event in the city where we also, what it seems like we could do if we needed to, we could hire people on the spot. If we can hire them in one day, which is, I think, what we just talked about 2 or 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, if they have the, yes,
if
sir, if they have the necessary qualifications and can present them to us. A lot of it is, again, getting them to, in the jobs that we've been talking about, making sure that they have the necessary clearance from the county and from the city. And that's where the big delay occurs, because we don't always get the best cooperation from, getting the reports. But the mayor's office has worked very hard with me in terms of getting that information. Our city police get us that information right away. But, and I'm always interested in specifics because I think you're right, there's a big blame game. I've been here 15 years, but anytime anybody has any problem, I can tell you I have a stack like this that I keep of responses back from the appointing authorities, just thanking us for being collaborative. They can come into my office at any time. I meet with almost all the directors periodically, not just a cabinet, strategizing on what we can do, to make these jobs more attractive. And that's why, you've seen an increase in pay for some of the people that, like the water division. We put forth a pay regulation. All those people who are water meter readers and who are water inspectors and water maintenance workers, et cetera, all got a pay increase. Average was 15 to 26% because I'm competing against American Water, and they pay their people $27.60 an hour. So, but in terms of, I would ask that if any of those directors have any concerns at all about how long a process takes, that, they've all got my phone number. Most of them have my cell phone number. They can write me an email. Or if you have any applicants that ever feel like they've gotten lost in the system, typically they'll go to my recruitment exam manager, but they can certainly call me or my secretary or write me, and we get a response back within 2 days. 2 days is the average turnaround time for, once we see a requisition, getting those names back. But then remember, the appointing authority has 21 days to do the hiring. So even after they submit a requisition to me, they can take up to 21 days, and they've got other things going on too. So it may feel to the applicant like it's about a month before, they hear back. It really depends on how quickly the department gets the necessary paperwork into me.
So I have a few applicants in right now that have kind of been waiting. I don't know if you received my email, but I've talked to your secretary also, and left a message for you and have not received and it could, once again, it could be a breakdown in communication. I'm just,
I'll be glad to give you my direct cell phone number and also my direct phone number at work as well, because again, I want to make sure that I'm getting that message.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
I have one more question. Would you be willing to do a hiring event in the city, possibly in City Hall, if we can work something out, which I'm sure we can, where we hire on the spot and see where that gets us? I think, out of a city with 150,000 individuals or 200,000 people who are not children that are, that are old enough to actually qualify for these jobs, I'd be remiss to think that we don't have qualified individuals. I think there are plenty of them. I think they may not know that these jobs exist. Not to say that we're not doing an amazing job getting them out there, but like you said, we just started with social media. I don't know how long that campaign has been running. There are plenty of ways to go out and grab people. I'm sure I could find people for particular offices today just by knocking on some doors. I think there are plenty of individuals who are looking for employment. We have a lot of people that always say that there are no jobs, and some people are willing to take, at this point in time, thinking that with that type of stigma that, I'll take whatever I can get. I think we kind of need to ensure before we do open up the city to everybody, kind of look at what we can do realistically to get every single person in the city who wants to be hired. If you are really trying to get a job and you really do qualify, of course those who don't, you just can't do anything about that, but get them trained and ready. But as far as really vetting our city and ensuring that we have qualified individuals who can actually qualify to work, that's one of the reasons that Amazon left, because we're not workforce ready. We really need to start looking at what we can do to be a self-sustaining city and don't have to look at the outside on the outside and can do what we need to do from within. I think it'd be worthwhile, once again, to do a hiring event where you're hiring people on the spot for those individuals who feel like it's been months waiting on an answer, who have went off and found other jobs because of the process. I don't think we'd have a problem that day. I think we could fill hundreds of positions in one day, just like we've hired 20 or 30 people in one day.
One of my duties under the charter is to enforce Article 18 and the civil service rules. And being a merit system, we do have different tests for fitness. So there are some positions, such as a tree trimmer or perhaps a person who's cutting the lawn or maybe a housekeeper, where the minimum qualifications are pretty easy. And if we don't have an existing eligible list, I can hire on the spot. But because of our civil service rules, there's other times where I have to evaluate. The charter requires that I rank people in order, the top 6. And if there's an existing eligible list, I can't get by with that. So I don't have the luxury for many positions to be able to say, I'm going to hire you right on the spot. And so we're at a huge disadvantage because, of that type of process. We try and work around it for some of the high need positions. We start our hiring campaign for forestry and for refuse, et cetera, but particularly forestry and parks in the fall. And again, I think one of the things that will be beneficial that you'll see is that as we take these people who maybe feel a little disenfranchised or not really part of our family because they're only here 8 months a year, as they become full-time, I think those opportunities will be attractive. And the other thing is, and I believe that Alderwoman Howard mentioned this, we still give a preference, not only a promotional preference, but also a residency preference, of points. A hiring preference for people who live in the city. So we do want people to live in the city. It's just that for some of the difficult jobs, we want to make sure that, people have a chance to apply. Frankly, I think that the economy's about ready to change, which is not good for some of our investments, but it does change the employment. Yeah, the landscape a bit. We start getting more applicants. But I appreciate that, and I will talk to my exam manager. We have done multiple hiring events, but I think having one right here at City Hall is something that we could certainly support and see what we can do.
Understood. So I'm working on doing a hiring event right now with a few different employers around the city. We got about 150, maybe 160. We got about 150 jobs available right now from different businesses that are looking for employees. I would love for the city to be involved with that. The goal is, once again, for us to have people that live here, work here, and that makes them a part of something bigger than this, just themselves, just getting a check. You actually care about the city. You know, if you're cutting trees 9 times out of 10, if there's a house next door to you, you know, you're going to take care of that property also, because at some point in time you're going to have to go to work and somebody you know is going to have to do it. And it's not just about the trees and grass, it's, you know, all of those positions. But for those ones that you can hire on the spot with, I think it'd be worthwhile to try to fill those positions up on an on-the-spot hiring event and really give it a shot and see how that actually works out. Maybe we'll see a difference, maybe we won't, but we can say to individuals, if this is something that ends up happening, as far as us removing this residency rule, that we did try this and we tried these particular things. It was open to the public, and you know, either people showed up and weren't qualified or nobody showed up at all. But you know, at least it gives us a good faith effort in being able to prove to the public that this wasn't something that we just did because we felt like we had done enough. You know, of course, the public is going to always feel like we can do more. I get that. Once again, I think we got plenty of qualified people. I don't work in that department, so I can't argue with how many applications that you get regularly of people who are not qualified. But if I can get a list of all of the jobs that you have available, I'm sure that I can help you find qualified workers.
We post that on the Department of Personnel website. As I said, there's 130 different examination announcements. So we're hiring for 130 people, or 30 job openings, I guess job classifications, I should say. So, you know, we've never had this many vacancies. One of the things I know that was very interesting is when we offered a waiver for correctional officers, and I've spoke to this before, within 3 months we had 300 applicants. We didn't even have to give a waiver, but it was just a psychological, I think, relief that those people felt that, well, if I need it, I can get it. And I think that was very, very helpful. But now we're reaching, I think, critical shortages. It may change, but you know, our belief is that you know, anything we can do to fill these positions as quickly as possible, you know, we're going to do. And we have had, and I'd be glad to send you, Alderman, a long listing of the different events we go to. But I think the idea of one here in City Hall would be excellent. Very open to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any more questions? No, not hearing none, do you want to, any final statement? And then we'll call for a motion.
I would like to remind people, the committee, that this change does not go forward until it's voted on by the citizenry of the city of St. Louis in November of 2020. So what we're doing today is just putting it, you know, moving it forward to put it on the ballot so that the citizens can make this charter change if they will to do so. So what we're doing will not change this, sadly, you know, so that we can hire people from outside and we can fill all these vacancies if that's what happens. It's just a matter of we're going to be able to put it on the ballot so that our constituents can vote on this, because it is a charter change to the city of St. Louis. And with that in mind, I would like to put that before the committee. And if
You want to make a motion? I entertain a motion to.
I make a motion that we pass out Board Bill 34 as amended.
Second. Please,
Alderman Rhodey.
Aye.
Alderman Vollmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Chairwoman Howard.
aye.
6 aye votes.
Board Bill 34 as amended passes out with the due pass.
Okay.
I guess you can come back. We have another bill, don't we? Oh, discussion, okay.
At this time, I'd like to discuss the Whistleblower Ordinance that was put in effect about a year ago, 70847. The Director of Personnel has asked me to bring this back before us. I think that at this point, we can eliminate this, and I'd like you to speak to the whistleblower. Mr. Frank? You'd reintroduce yourself again.
Richard Frank, Director of Personnel. Thank you, honorable members of the Public Employees Committee. The whistleblower ordinance, I think, was introduced with good intent to protect our employees from retaliation if they do make a complaint about anything that has to do with monetary things or about sexual harassment or anything that's inappropriate in the workplace. Some problems have surfaced, and I think some of it's obvious in the floor substitute, but there's some missing language and I think some markup. But the big issue is that, number one, I don't believe that the Civil Service Commission has the authority to reinstate an employee who doesn't have permanent status according to the charter. I did consult with Deputy City Councilor Nancy Kistler at length, as well as other members of the law department, and we are concerned that, in effect, this really may conflict with the charter. Any employee who's a civil service employee has 10 days from the date of any kind of disciplinary action to file an appeal with the commission. And the commission has, quasi-judicial jurisdiction. Any civil service employee can also file a complaint about any of these matters directly. I have today with me Ashley McLean, who's my wonderful administrative assistant to the Civil Service Commission, very familiar with the procedures. Any act of the appointing authority or myself as director can be appealed directly to the Civil Service Commission. And that isn't even limited to 90 days. So if there's an event that happened, 5 months ago, and that person wants to make, an appeal over feeling like they are harassed or were discriminated against, et cetera, they would have the ability to do that. One of the things that I'm concerned about with this bill, which I discussed with Nancy Kistler, is you might have two different time frames. I have some people now who are on forced leave, for instance, and they've tried to file, they have 10 days from the notice of any disciplinary action to appeal to the commission. One of them didn't appeal.
And that's by city charter?
That's by the charter, Article 18 of the city charter. They have 10 days to appeal to the Civil Service Commission. I believe it's Article 18, Section 6. But under this ordinance, they would have 90 days if they felt that the action was retaliatory. So you could conceivably have someone who's filed an appeal of their forced leave in front of the commission and then have a separate investigation through the whistleblower ordinance into that same matter, claiming that it's retaliatory. So it poses some logistical problems that the law department asked that I bring to this committee's attention. Ms. Kistler's not available today, but it's those concerns, not the intent of this ordinance, but those concerns about it conflicting with the charter, perhaps confusing employees about what the procedure is, that I would like to comment upon.
Okay. So your suggestion or your appeal is to eliminate this ordinance completely and allow you to just use the city
My first recommendation would be to simply rescind it, to repeal it. I don't know what the correct language is.
Right.
However, if the committee is not willing to make that recommendation, then what I would ask is that just clarifying language be added to, the remedies, which is Section 6. It's on page 6, line 8. Sorry for my bad eyes here. I'm getting old. In the case of employees who are covered by the civil service system, the auditing official shall recommend in writing to the department personnel, and then there's a fractured sentence, possible remedies, Civil Service Commission. I think it would need to say, in case of permanent civil service employees, or in the case of employees who are permanent, somehow we have to get that language in. I'm on the fly here, but it would have to be permanent civil service employees, or otherwise clearly the commission would not have any authority to reinstate them, because under the charter, the appointing authority has the right to fail their working test period within the first 6 months. And then I think it would need to say, they need to recommend it in writing to the Director of Personnel, and then I would introduce it to the Civil Service Commission. So I think if the committee does not see fit to rescind it, that clarifying language along with, the other cleanups would help. I have distributed this per the commandment of the ordinance to all city employees, and, we've gotten some questions. They're a little confused by it. I also think one of the original intents was to cover the county offices. I have only jurisdiction over, we have 6,721 full-time positions in the civil service and anywhere from 250 to 800 part-time. I have authority over those as the Director of Personnel, but, the Collector of Revenue, Circuit Attorney, et cetera, I have no province over them. I assist them, I help them do investigations or study their positions, but I think originally this bill was kind of designed to help with, those county employees, and it's kind of just turned into something different. So.
At this time, I'd like to know if anyone has any questions. Alderman Rhodey?
No question.
Alderman Valmer?
No questions.
Alderman Hubbard?
Yes, I have a few comments, I guess. I think I would have a problem with us just rescinding it or doing away with it altogether. I think it would be important for us to tighten up the language. At one point, this was put forth because someone felt we needed something more than what we already had on the books, and I can understand what you're saying about on per the charter or whatever, it'll say 10 days, and this says 90 days. So I think if we could possibly meet somewhere in the middle and just address some of the issues you talked about regarding like the county offices, but I don't think it's something that we should just do away with. So I would be open to, the language being changed to closely mirror what we have and cut down on some of the confusion, just so that we move forward, because there definitely is a need for whistleblower protection within our city. And that's all my comments.
Alderman Murphy?
Yeah, I guess the same thing to count or go on what she was saying. Now, you said like this doesn't apply to the county offices. Do they have their own procedures? Do we know that but not necessarily, because those are...
I don't see them. Sometimes they will ask me to...
Those are at-will kind of jobs.
Yeah,
some of
them
extent.
are.
Right.
Yeah, I think most of them are at will unless they've created a personnel policy manual that binds them. So each of them have different procedures. And again, a lot of times they'll, at one point in time with the prior sheriff, I was asked by the court in Bonk to do all the EEOC investigations because there were problems within the sheriff's office, and we certainly assist. But again, I'm happy to do what the committee wishes in terms of either, perfecting, cleaning up this language, or again, a lot of these, if this applies, if we want to make sure that this clearly applies to, all city employees, regardless of whether or not they're civil service or not, I think we just need to craft that language.
Yes, I think that we definitely need to clean it up and tighten it up. So in the meantime, do we suspend this, or do we rescind this? That's what I'm not sure.
I think it's still workable, Alderwoman. I've received one complaint from the NAACP, but it didn't comply with this format because it states in the ordinance that it has to be the employee who files the complaint to the proper auditing official, and it had to do with financial stuff. So I wrote back to the NAACP, to Adolphus Pruitt, and just advised him of the pertinent sections and said, look, you need to have the employee, pursuant to the ordinance, file this with the comptroller since it's a financial issue. So we're still trying to make it work as well as possible. I've only received 3 of these since the inception of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
What I would like is if we could have Ms. Kistler formulate what, or get a copy of what is on the books as far as what you have already, and then put that with this and maybe, rescind this and redo.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
What are we doing today?
Ms. Kistler is gone until next week, but I will certainly be in communication with her and with the city councilor about crafting language that hopefully reconciles this language with the charter. I'd be glad to do that.
That would be good.
Okay.
And that way we're all on the same
I'm
page.
happy with that, certainly.
Okay, and we'll have that when she gets back after the
Yes.
holiday?
Yes, and I'll send this to the city council today with an explanation of what occurred here today, too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, May 22nd.
Second?
And I'd like to excuse the following aldermen, Shamim Clark Hubbard from this meeting today. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Seeing no objection, I call this meeting adjourned.
There you go. You need
Okay.
you didn't bring